Hi, doctor. My name is Ning. I majored in measurement and assessment. Today, it's my honor to be here to share with you my topic about stage 4. My topic is from testing to learning how assessment can drive high quality educations. As we all know that SDG4 actually can help us ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote the lifelong learning opportunities for all. But this is quite hard to achieve these goals because it has so many years to achieve these goals, right? So, in my opinion, I think if we could establish a very fair and professional system of measurement and assessment in education can help us to achieve these goals. Assessment in the process of collecting and interpreting information to aid in decision making. And measurement in education refers to the process of assigning new number to characteristics of individuals according to the roles. Actually, I think the measurement and the assessment can help us to transfer what we cannot observe by our naked eyes into the comparable data, such as students' psychological activities and their attitudes, so that we can make more appropriate decisions in our teaching strategies and our teaching structures, so that the measurement and assessment should be more than just testing and grading. It should be a strategic systems for comprehensive judgment on the learning process and outcomes used to support the teaching decisions and student growth. Of course, there are so many different ways and types of measurement and assessment, such as the standardized test, formative assessment, and competency evaluation. They're not merely the score-oriented, but can also be used to observe students' emotional development, the social skills, and the collaboration abilities, so that we can give the students different help, because we can observe their different, like the individual differences, and so that we can help them to achieve their own holistic development. There are two types of way, like the social and emotional learning assessment. It focuses on to use the tools like rating scale, the student reflections, and teacher observations to track growth in emotional and social competencies. So it helps us to measure the student skills in area like the self-awareness and emotional regulations. But the project-based assessment evaluates the students through the real-world task that could help us to integrate knowledge, collaboration, creativity, and communication. It focuses on the both actually the process and the final product, using rubrics, the peer feedback, and self-reflections. Of course, if we want to establish the systems, maybe we need to firstly have a global overview about this systems. The first point I want to mention is the high dependency of international education system on assessment. So many countries are increasingly rely on the assessment data to evaluate their students' learning outcomes and to adjust their teachers' strategies. And there's a very, very good transitions from the testing to the development assessment. So many schools and universities now are adopting the formative assessment and competencies-based assessment, emphasizing the learning process rather than the outcomes. Of course, like the OECD stress that the assessment should focus the future competence and the social emotional skills and the student subjectivities, and it also come up very good ideas about the systems, the PISA, help us to assess the 5 years old students' ability to apply knowledge in reading, math, science to the real life situations. And the technological empowerment for the standardizing the educational assessments, like the electronic assessment, AI adaptive testing, and learning analytics has enhanced the capabilities for personalized assessment and real-time feedback. But also we face a lot of challenges, right? The first one is inadequate accessibilities, inequalities in resource allocations with assessment systems. So many developing countries and rural areas lack support for assessment infrastructures and teacher learning, and they cannot to implement modern assessment forms such as online tests and data tracking. Of course, the inconsistent assessment quality, inadequate professionalism in assessment tools and the implementations. Many countries still rely on the high-stakes examination. Example for Chinese Gaokao, right? Ignoring the process-oriented assessment and the teacher assessment literacy varies widely, with high subjectivity in grading and no reliability and validity of the tools. Of course, we lack the inclusivity, the assessments lack the respect to the diversity and the equalities, such as the ethnic minorities and non-native students are at a very, very disadvantage in uniform testing lead to biased assessment results. And because this standardized test often ignores students' cultural backgrounds, linguistic differences, and the special learning needs. So if we want to overcome these problems, perhaps we need to have a further study of this gaps. The first one is the resource gaps, because the resource allocation is unfair. So that in the developing countries, or the rural areas, some teachers even lack understanding of the basic formative assessment methods, such as how to use rubrics for grading or interpreting students' response trained. And even after collecting this data, they cannot deal with it because they lack of the fundamental knowledge about the educational data platforms and systematic feedback mechanisms. And the second one is lack of inclusivity. The assessment content in many countries implicitly contains cultural biases. For example, using examples, metaphors, and linguistic styles from middle-class daily life, which is unfair to the students from diverse backgrounds. This systematic errors often lead to such students being mislabeled and marginalized. And the curriculum's misalignment, many current exams still prioritize memory based and computational questions, ignoring higher order skills like the critical thinking, problems solving ability, and collaborative communications. Even though the curriculum reforms often advocates the competency-oriented approaches, so that leading to a very, very bad and disconnected between the teaching objectives and assessment method. So for me, my problem statement is also the assessment is same as a key tool for educational improvement. Many countries still rely heavily on high stakes summative exams focus on memorizations and ranking. Such practice overlook diverse learners' limited formative feedback and fall short of the inclusive and holistic goals of SDG 4. To achieve the equitable and quality education, assessment system should shift, viewing the assessment as a tool for learning, not just a selection, enables the teachers to better support students. Formative and culturally responsive assessment can help those achievement gaps and foster the cognitive, emotional, and social skills related to the lifelong learnings. But in the world, there are so many world has their own problems. Like in America, cultural bias affecting assessment outcomes. The so many standardized tests like the SAT has been criticized for the content cultural and the linguistic biases, especially for the non-native speakers, families, and low-income ethnic groups. And after the COVID-19, the South Africa, the pandemic exacerbating the pre-existing educational inequalities. The UNESCO reported highlights that the pre-existing educational gap in the South Africa were amplified by the COVID-19, with rural students' average reading level regressing by over 2 years. So this is quite important for us to establish the system because it can help us to promote the students' holistic development, such as the project-based learning and performance evaluation can encourage the students to engage in deep thinking, collaborative expression, and the emotional regulation. And the social emotional learning assessment can help the students understand themselves and manage stress, and thereby promoting mental health and well-being. So let's do a justifications about these systems nowadays. Actually, this current assessment system fails to also authentically reflect the quality of learning. Then this narrow assessment oversimplifies educational objectives, promoting teachers and students to design instructions around exams, leading to teaching deviation from holistic learning goals. And the second one is the lack of practical application value in assessment results. Many assessments are only used for ranking and scoring, with results forgotten after the exam, failing to form an effective feedback loop. The teacher are also truly in using assessment data to get instructions, leading to data without insight. And the unfair assessment exacerbates education inequalities. The bias assessment tools themselves are biased, and the educational systems cannot accurately identify those students' learning needs. Instead, it may misguide the resources or locations. It's very, very bad, and we need to pay attention to that. So if we establish it, we can have following benefits for the individual. It can enhance self cognition and learning motivation. It can boost the self efficacy and well-being. For the school, the teacher can identify group differences and adjust the teaching plans based on assessment rules, and assessment no longer serves as a punishment mechanism, but as a learning partners, foster the teacher-student interactions rooted in collaboration rather than the control. And for the communities, it can enhance trust in the educational system. A fair and transparent assessment framework help parents and society build trust in the educational system. And the stressing the social quality and opportunity mobility is very, very beneficial for our whole the circle of the society. And for me, I came up 3 ways to help us to establish this assessment and measurement. The first one is a formative assessment as a assessment for learning. The teacher use methods such as classroom question, working analysis, student self-evaluation, and learning logs to monitor learning progress in real time, and adjust the teaching strategies, and diversified and performance-based assessment tasks are designed to mimic real-life scenarios or interdisciplinary projects, enabling the student to apply knowledge rather than memorize it. And the teacher-enabled system reform, the AI adaptive test platforms and online feedback system to make assessment more precise, timely, and personalized. And actually, there are so many countries do a very good job, like Singapore and Finland. In Singapore, a comprehensive assessment system oriented towards holistic development. It introduces the assessment dimensions of character and citizenship, the education to incorporate the students' behavior, value, and social responsibility into the evaluation. And in the primary school stage, the midterm ranking is cancelled, and the rubric and formative assessment are used to record the students' growth. And the Finland de-emphasis exam and valuing teacher professional judgment. Not unify national academic test with high trust placed in teacher professional judgment. Assessment are based on daily observation and work portfolio and reflections on the learning process. So, in the pursuit of SDG 4, rethinking assessment is no longer optional. It is essential. As this representation has shown, current system remain overly focused on high-stakes exams, neglecting the deeper holistic dimensions of learning. Inclusive, formative, and development assessment offers a path forward, one that recognizes the whole child, respects diversity, and empowers teachers to teach for growth, not just for grades. To truly ensure quality education for all, we must move from assessment of learning to assessment for learning, and ultimately toward assessment as learning. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor, for your listening. Have a good day.